Welcome to the You on the Camino de Santiago podcast. This podcast is for and about first-time pilgrims walking the pilgrimage routes in Spain, France, and Portugal. With your host, guide and longtime pilgrim, Nancy Reynolds of the Camino Experience. Welcome to the beginning of your next Camino. That may seem like a funny thing to say, but today I'm going to be speaking specifically to people who have already walked one of the Camino routes and who are looking at how to bring home their first Camino experience, or second or third, really, because I'll tell you, today's topic is something I contend with every time I return home from the Camino, and I've been dealing with it for 20 years. Hi, this is Nancy, and today we're going to be talking about the post-Camino blues. But first, I need to clarify something I said in the last episode when I was talking about La Terraza, our online pilgrim community. In that episode, I shared that I will be co-hosting a gratitude walk in the Seattle area on the Friday of Thanksgiving weekend, November 28th. To clarify, that walk is not part of La Terraza. It is open to everyone, and it is free. Anyone can attend. You don't need to be a member of La Terraza to join myself and author and pilgrimage guide Jen Mangloss for that walk. Jen will have some reflective prompts for us, and I will be saying a few words about the intersection of gratitude and pilgrimage. If you would like to join us, we would love for you to sign up for this free event so we know how many people to expect. You can do that on my website, thecaminoexperience.com/gratitude, and you can find that link in the show notes. Okay, now let's get to our topic for today. In this episode, I am pulling together 2 audio sessions into one podcast episode, drawing from the guided Camino re-entry content available in La Terraza, our online pilgrim community. We start with the post-Camino blues. This first part is about something we don't talk about enough. It's something almost every pilgrim feels, the emotional and spiritual challenge of returning home from the Camino. After all the walking, the quiet, the moments of connection and clarity, it's jarring to come back to schedules, noise, and expectations. You may feel disoriented, disconnected, even a little lost. That's not a sign something went wrong. It's a sign that something changed. This is sacred ground. When you returned home from the Camino, you may have felt a bit lost. If that's the case, you are not alone. Think about it. You just spent weeks or even a month or more living life at the pace of walking, each day planned with a clear purpose in mind and shared with others who were literally moving in the same direction for basically the same reason. You spent hours outside each day dealing with the elements, all your senses engaged, and pushing your body in ways it likely hadn't ever been pushed. Every day was different, yet the same. Each day you met new people from the far reaches of the world and formed friendships with people you would never have met at home. Maybe you even found a new family out there on the trail, and you now know what true community feels like. There's more, so much more. And that's what we begin to explore in this episode of the podcast. Once we talk about the post-Camino blues, we are then going to look at why integration matters just as much as the journey. When I say that these audio sessions have been pulled right out of La Terraza, I mean that quite literally. They are part of the core content I provide to the community each month. And the 2 audio sessions you are about to hear are from the guided program called Bringing the Camino Home, which every member gets. What you won't get here on the podcast, though, are all the journaling prompts that come with each audio session. Those are available only inside La Terraza. There are 3 additional modules available in La Terraza right now, too, and another one being added week by week throughout November 2025. We have one called Grief, Longing, and the Loss of Simplicity, where we explore how to process the heavy emotions and feelings of loss we experience when we leave the Camino. Sometimes when we reflect on our Camino experiences, we have trouble grasping what actually happened and why were we impacted so deeply. So we look at that in the next module in La Terraza, which is called What We Didn't Know Was Happening. This one blows people's minds. Once we have a better sense of what actually happened to us on the Camino, we can then explore how to better tell our Camino stories. Think about it. How do you tell a story you don't fully understand yourself? So we look at the story from a number of different angles, from your view as the narrator of your Camino story, and also from the unique view of you as the hero of your story. And you weren't out there alone, were you? Your Camino included a vast number of people, some who supported you at and from home, and others who walked with you on the trail. Some who uplifted you as you made your way to Santiago, and others who challenged you and pushed your buttons. And finally, every story needs an audience, so we have to look at who is listening and what they want to hear. All of that is in the section called Telling Your Camino Story. In La Terraza, in November, we are slowing things down to recapture the one defining feature of every pilgrimage on the Camino de Santiago. We are rediscovering life at the pace of walking. When we return home from pilgrimage, after days or weeks of walking, many of us stop walking. We hang up our packs, put away our boots, and slip back into daily life. But that is a mistake. The best thing we can do after a journey like the Camino is to keep walking. So that's what we're doing in November together as a community. And then each month I will be adding a new module, so there is always fresh content to guide your journey from the Camino back home. Bringing home your Camino experience is a journey, just like walking the Camino was. And what better way to bring it home than with other pilgrims who get it, with people who want to hear your Camino stories and appreciate that you want to hear theirs. Now, I've just scratched the surface of what's available in La Terraza. If you'd like the whole story, you can go to thecaminoexperience.com/La Terraza. That's LATERRAZA. The link is in the show notes. Now, let's go ahead and dive in, starting with the lesson on the post-Camino blues. And then the recording will hop right over to the lesson on why integration matters just as much as the journey. I hope you enjoy this, and I hope you will accept my invitation to check out La Terraza. Here we go. When you return home from the Camino, you may feel a bit lost. If that's the case, you are not alone. Think about it. You just spent weeks or even a month or more living life at the pace of walking. Each day planned with a clear purpose in mind and shared with others who were literally moving in the same direction for basically the same reason. You spent hours outside each day dealing with the elements, all your senses engaged, and pushing your body in ways it likely hadn't ever been pushed. Every day was different, yet the same. Each day you met new people from the far reaches of the world and formed friendships with people you would never have met at home. Maybe you even found a new family out there on the trail, and you now know what true community feels like. You laughed, you cried, you ate and slept in a different bed in a different town every night. You shared intimate details and private moments with people who just days before were complete strangers. And you took on you, your thoughts and emotions, your history and dreams for the future, your doubts, fears, and questions about everything from where to get a coffee to how to bring deeper meaning into your daily life. You took all those things on a big adventure. You navigated flights and trains and buses, found food and shelter each night, and kept track of a few dozen items that had been so carefully selected that the loss of one thing would throw off your entire day. You climbed mountains, ascended into the clouds, and then descended down again on terrain that should be accessed only by mountain goats. You crossed streams, wandered through deserted towns, chased down yellow arrows in busy metropolitan areas, slogged through ugly industrial zones, and witnessed the exquisite beauty of how the light falls on old buildings in the center of a small village whose name you can't remember. And you did all that in a language you don't speak or understand. And all that is if it went well. What if it didn't go as planned? What if you got sick, injured, or lost? What if your feet were overtaken by blisters and your dream of walking every step of the way was shattered in the first days of the journey? What if you got lost in a more metaphoric way and you found yourself questioning your motives and values or your very sanity? Can you begin to get your head around the enormity of what you just took on? Can you see how big this was, no matter how it went? And now, it's over. You're home, back to the comforts and predictability of life before the Camino. Back to your old routines and rhythms. Your body that was in motion for all those hours, for all those days and weeks, is now still. Kelly McGonigal, author of the book The Joy of Movement, says that movement is intertwined with some of the most basic human joys, with self-expression, social connection, and mastery. Think about that. Doesn't that exactly describe walking the Camino? Joy, finding and expressing your most authentic self, connecting with others who have the same purpose as you, and getting really good at something. Of course we love how we felt on the Camino. Are you feeling a bit disoriented, sad, irritable, or annoyed? This is normal. In fact, it's normal to feel all the emotions we as humans have access to. Not only are you probably no longer walking 4 to 6 hours a day, but you also had to say goodbye to the people who know and understand your new pilgrim self. There is science behind this, but I bet you don't need the scientific explanation to grasp the idea that you now have hardwired into your very being a new love for movement, community, and this simpler lifestyle. And more time outside wouldn't hurt either. Of course, there is more to it than that, and we will get to it all. For now, I want you to know that what you are feeling, what you felt when you first came home, is normal. And I want to invite you to embrace the idea that this is all part of your pilgrimage. You may have heard this somewhere along the way as you were planning and preparing for the Camino. The pilgrimage didn't end when you reached Santiago. This is especially true if this was for you a true pilgrimage. What does that mean? Let's quickly reach back to our early research and to the first episodes of the You on the Camino de Santiago podcast to remind ourselves what it meant to go on a pilgrimage. I like to refer to the book by San Francisco author Phil Cousineau, The Art of Pilgrimage. In it, Cousineau says this: a pilgrimage is a transformative journey to a sacred center. Pilgrimage is a spiritual exercise, an act of devotion to find a source of healing, or even to perform a penance. Always, It is a journey of risk and renewal. For a journey without challenge has no meaning. One without purpose has no soul. He goes on to say, making a pilgrimage is a way to prove your faith and find answers to your deepest questions. Let's pull out some of these key ideas. A transformative journey to a sacred center. Have you been transformed by your journey in some small or big way? What was, for you, the sacred center? Maybe it was the tomb of the Apostle James in the cathedral in Santiago de Compostela. Or maybe it was your own heart or your relationship with God. Did you find healing from some old emotional wound or from losing a loved one? From damage inflicted by someone who did you wrong in your early life? Or did you find relief from a lifetime of self-criticism or even self-loathing? Do you feel renewed? Do you feel strong and proud for having taken on this enormous task and arriving in Santiago victorious? How is your faith now? Have you found answers to your deepest questions? Or have you uncovered more important questions that now need to be answered? Let's take a deep breath and step back for a moment. Can you see why returning home from the Camino is both difficult and an essential part of the journey? Just as the Camino challenged you, so too will returning home challenge you. In fact, I will assert that none of this is meant to be easy, and this is simply the next part of your journey. Are you ready for it? I hope so, because here's the thing. There really is no other option than to continue on this path. Even if the Camino was, for you, just one big, exciting adventure, or one long, physically arduous hike, or if you tell the story like you just spent a month bar hopping across northern Spain, I bet something inside you has changed, shifted, expanded. I bet your world is bigger than it was before you left home to walk the Camino, and it's possible you like it that way. Wherever you find yourself, however long ago you returned from the Camino, whether it was a week ago or a decade ago, we have to talk about why reintegration matters just as much as the walk itself. And that's what we'll be doing next. Why integration matters just as much as the journey. Let's start by looking at the totality of a pilgrimage on the Camino de Santiago. If you were to talk to a friend or family member about walking the Camino, you would probably spend most of your time talking about the actual walk. I started here. I walked for this many days. I met these people. And I finished in Santiago or wherever I stopped walking, and I got my certificate at the end. But you know, and I know, that the Camino actually began long before you took your first steps on the trail. It started when you first heard about the Camino, and you felt something tug at your heart and mind. There was absolute certainty that this was what you needed to be doing, wasn't there? You didn't know why. You just knew you needed to do it. You didn't know if you could actually do it, but you knew you needed to try. Think back to the time you spent planning and preparing for the Camino. Any ups and downs there? Any challenges or difficulties? Any frustrations? Finding the right boots and backpack, figuring out what to take and what to leave at home, determining how to get to your starting point in 5 easy steps or less? Maybe the challenge was paying for the trip and silencing a familiar voice that kept telling you that you couldn't justify spending this much money on yourself, or that you didn't deserve to go after your dreams, or that there is no way you could ever walk that far and for that long, or that you weren't smart enough to put together a trip this complex. Or here's one of my favorites. You had to convince yourself that you weren't crazy to want to do this thing, even though everyone who heard about your plans thought you'd lost it. No wonder you felt so good, so free on the Camino. Look what you overcame to get there. I just want to remind you that the most daunting part of walking the Camino was just getting started, getting to your starting point and taking those first few steps. At some point, though, you hit your stride. You settled into your pilgrim identity. Now, the bad news. While getting started was the most daunting part of walking the Camino, the hardest part is coming home and bringing that incredible experience back into your daily life. Whether it was easy or hard, joy-filled, or one big long struggle. Now you're at the hard part. Here's why. You have just shown yourself that you can do hard things. You've overcome physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual challenges and hardships. And you did it with specific people in a beautiful country supported by warm and welcoming hospitality. And you spent a lot of time outdoors in nature, with the breeze on your skin or the wind in your hair, all at the pace of walking. So you were seeing, smelling, touching, and hearing new things, all your senses engaged. And there's more. You met people whose stories opened your heart and inspired you to do more and go further than you ever thought you could. You became a part of more than 1,000 years of history, and being part of something bigger than yourself is illuminating, addicting, intoxicating. What comes next isn't that. What comes next may seem quite dull and uninspiring by comparison. It may even feel like an intrusion into your newly acquired sense of self or peace of mind. And not walking all those hours each day may feel like an insult to your newly strengthened body. Here's where I'm going with this. Your pilgrimage isn't over just because you reached Santiago, or Fistera, or Muxía. And it isn't over because you left Spain and returned home. There's more. But now the path forward isn't quite so clear. Remember all those yellow arrows you followed and came to trust? They did their job. They got you to the cathedral in Santiago or to the coast. But now they've stopped. I've often said that what pilgrims really need when they reach Santiago is not a certificate declaring that they've completed the journey. What we really need is a paintbrush and a bucket of yellow paint so we can mark the way ahead. This is our task now, to find our way without the yellow arrows, or to paint the arrows ourselves to mark the path that we want to follow. For some people, that will be walking another Camino route or returning to the one they've just walked. For others, it will be scrapping a job or relationship that no longer satisfies or serves them. Some pilgrims will return home to simplify and downsize their lives. Many pilgrims find themselves asking what I have found to be the most perplexing question of all. Now what? But you could also ask the most empowering question. What's next? With an open heart and confident spirit. Whatever question you ask yourself next, I bet you won't be going back to who you were before the Camino entered your life. You won't be going back to that version of normal, or at least you won't want to. See, you didn't just walk the Camino. You became someone new, and that new person needs a new normal. It might be subtle, or it might be a tectonic shift, but some things will need to change. The question is what, and how soon, or how fast. This is your chance to define what the Camino really meant to you. What will you take away from the experience? What changes will you make in your life? What are you being called to? Which relationships will you deepen, and which ones will you let go of? Where will you go next? Who will you meet? Who will you inspire? What will you create? I love posing these questions. Now, back to Phil Cousineau, the author of The Art of Pilgrimage. I love what he says about questions. He says, questions initiate the quest and tune the soul. Well, let's get to it. I've got a lot more questions for you to consider as we bring the Camino home. Well, there it is, my friends, the first 2 parts of the Bringing the Camino Home guided journey. There is so much more to follow this, and it is all available inside the La Terraza community. When you join La Terraza, you also gain access to our regularly scheduled pilgrim meetups, such as Tapas Tuesday, the LT Book Club, and coming in December, the LT Dream Collective, where we will be going after our next non-Camino goals together in community. We have a guest speaker scheduled each month, including author Jen Manglas, pilgrim and life coach Kathy Kay, and author and filmmaker Bill Bennett. You will also meet some of the pilgrims who have been guests on this podcast: Chad, Maurice, Paul, Claire, David, and Richard and Claire for starters. This and more is available with the All Access plan. If your post-Camino needs are more on the introspective and reflective side rather than on the community engagement side, you may want to try out the Core Plan, which gives you access to all of the content in the Bringing Home the Camino guided journey, plus conversations with other pilgrims, but no meetups. Either way, you can find out more and choose the path that suits you best at thecaminoexperience.com/La Terraza. I hope to see you there.